I am Brandy Neal. I am a Title III program consultant, and Cayman Triplet is also a Title III program consultant. I also dabble in Title I Part A, so you can see me in both titles. Today, we're going to be talking about EL data standards and immigrant data standards. We'll start with EL. Okay, English Learner Data Standards. I have attached a link to the EL Data Standards in this PowerPoint, and it's also at the end under Resources. The bullets that you see are the sections listed in the EL Data Standards, and they are labeled in the Data Standards A through G. Section A is the census detail. Choose from the home primary language listed under Students' Home Language Survey, the HLS. The HLS should only be given upon a student's initial enrollment into a Kentucky public school. The list is populated by KDE based on the federal reporting allowable languages. For EL students, selections must be a language other than English and cannot be left blank. KDE's approved home language survey is linked at the end of this presentation under resources. Remember that the language chosen should be a language the student learned when they first learned to talk, not when they first started school, but when they first learned to talk. If the language is not listed that you need it, there is a selection that is other, and it's 1630. Remember that preschool students will not be officially identified as EL until they enroll into kindergarten. Section B is the EL screener and assessment. Districts must enter the student's EL screener details. The screener should be administered to determine the student's initial identification of an EL. Districts must also enter the detail into IC under the Student Assessment tab. Districts do not enter access for ELs or alternate access scores manually. KDE will populate those after the verification process. Test details are viewable via Student Assessments tab and the EL Assessment tab. Remember that kindergarten and semester 1, grade 1, take a paper pencil screener, and grades 1 through 12 take an online screener. Alternate access should only be used with your most significant cognitive disabilities. The WIDA Screener Interpretive Guide for Score Reports is linked at the end of this presentation under Resources to help guide you and answer any questions you may have. Section C. Before creating new records for EL students, search the student locator to locate any previous state enrollments. If previous records exist, you can import them through the records transfer instead of creating new records. Multiple records will create errors, so you need to make sure that you always search for them before you create a new record. If you select program status from the drop list, you enter the identified date, the day that the screener was provided and given, and then you enter the expected exit date, which is 5 years from the date the screener was given. Students who do not exit within 5 years should be evaluated for possible interventions. Parents decline services. The Office of Civil Rights requires EL services to be provided regardless of parent refusal. Students must be provided at least one active EL service and an instructional accommodation. If these aren't listed in IC, then you will get an error under EL extract. You must participate in access testing until reaching attainment, and the district should make these selections based on the PSP and the student needs. Reference Section G of the Dear Colleague letter that is linked here in the presentation. Interrupted schooling. If an English learner student in grade K through 12 experiences disruptions in education in their native country or in the United States, missing school for a continuous month or so due to withdrawal or absence, and the evidence options that you would provide would be attendance history, enrollment history, and lack of transcripts and/or grades. EL exited. If program status selection is EL exited, the program exit date will be required and the program exit state will already populate to Kentucky. If the student exited from another state, then you will need to update that section to whatever state the student exited from. The program exit date must be June 30th of the year in which the student reached attainment. First year through fourth year monitoring dates will pre-populate based on the program exit date entry. And remember that you have to monitor exited students and those students who have opted out of services for 4 years after. EL exit criteria. Grades 1 through 12, it is 4.5 or higher on a composite of tier B and C for access for ELs. And kindergarten is a 4.5 or higher overall composite on the WIDA kindergarten access. On the alternate access, it is a P2. EL misidentified date. If a student is determined as misidentified, the program status must change to not EL, and the date determined misidentified should be entered. Update the home primary language to English. End date all EL services and accommodations. And misidentification should be a rare event in your district, and it is a local decision whether you identify them as misidentified. We do have a new reference document named Addressing the Misidentification of Students as English Learners, and it is attached and linked in this document. Section D. The EL Service tab is used to track EL services a student receives while participating in the program. Students can receive multiple services. Services should not be end dated each year or when withdrawing from the district. End date services if the student exits EL or then the student no longer needs the service based on an update of the student's program service plan or PSP. If students exit EL, the services should be end dated of June 30th of the year that attainment was reached. Students must at least have one active EL service to be included into EL reporting. Section E. The EL accommodation tab is used to track and manage instructional and assessment accommodations provided to a student while participating in the EL program. Accommodations should not be end dated each year or when they withdraw from the district. End date accommodations if a student exits the EL program status or if they no longer need services based on the PSP. If a student exits EL, the accommodation date should end on June 30th of the year in which the student reached attainment. Students need at least one active EL instructional accommodation to be included in the EL reporting. Student records transfer. It is important to import all data from previous districts to ensure that all records are available in student records. To ensure that they are all imported during this process, transfer documents, EL Learner, EL Services, and EL Accommodations. The data imports are Extended Census Import Wizard, Student Home Primary Language History, Assessment Import Wizard, Student Screener and Prior Access Scores, and the EL import wizard with the EL record history, and they are highlighted on the screen. Transfer guidance. I'm going to go through a couple of different transfer scenarios, but in this section, there are more scenarios or different scenarios of transfers can be found in this section under the EL data standards. The initial enrollment in a Kentucky public school, the HLS must be given and appropriate procedures followed based on the language provided by the parent or the guardian. If you're transferring from another Kentucky school, do not create a new EL record. Instead, import records from the previous district regarding records transfer that we previously spoke about. Returning to Kentucky. You can accept ELP data for returning students from another state to inform student needs for the PSP. Students search the student locator to import all of those previous EL records and do not create new records for these students. And again, if you need different scenarios, they can be found on the EL data standards. Records transferred from other states, Section F. If the student not previously enrolled in Kentucky, an HLS must be given and appropriate procedures followed based on those languages listed. Remember that districts must use KDE's home language survey, and the template is at the end of this slide. Districts can utilize those scores from other states to inform student needs. However, students enrolling from a non-WIDA state must complete the appropriate WIDA screener, depending on what grade level they are on. Districts should accept exiting scores from other states, WIDA and non-WIDA states. EL exited records must be created with an identified date as date identified in the previous state. The program exit date will be June 30th of the year, and then you need to change the state to whatever state that they reached attainment because it pre-populates to Kentucky. Monitoring years will populate based on the exit date entered. Reporting requirements. States and districts are required to report the number and percentages of ELs in the programs and activities who are making progress toward achieving ELP in the aggregate and disaggregate at a minimum by English Learners with Disabilities, ELSWD. SF 3121A5 requires data on formal ELs to be disaggregated by ELSWD. The public school record card disaggregates assessment and accountability by EL and EL monitored student groups. The EL extract. Access must be granted by Kentucky Student Information System District Administrator. Districts need to generate the English Learner extract and IC on a regular basis to check for critical errors. Critical errors most of the time include these three: EL students without an active service type, without an active instructional accommodation, or if the student is listed as a home language as English. To be an EL, it has to be anything other than English. Extract and review data to ensure all students served are included. It's also a good idea to have a policy in place to have a routine check for the EL extract. English Learners Report. Districts need to start doing this about in October to prepare for access testing rosters. Districts should also have a policy in place to ensure this is ran on a regular basis to update records and eliminate errors. Not only is it good for funding, but it also helps ensure that when we start testing in January, that all of those records are updated and correct. Access must be granted by KSIS district administrator, and the report contains data on current EL students and those in the EL monitoring for the 4 years. Most recent access for current ELs, most recent KSA for EL monitored students, other student group inclusions, and EL services that are provided. Reporting timelines. KDE, and these timelines are, some of them are not right on point. It's from when we get get allocations from USAID. October 1st for federal reporting, that's is October 1st. The second Tuesday in March to determine preliminary Title III allocations. End of year data must be complete and accurate by June 30th. On July 1st, KDE extracts data for SEEK adjustments, final Title III allocations, and federal reporting. Districts will need to complete the intent to participate in GMAP in the spring. And of course, that has not opened yet due to not having funds yet. But as soon as we get those, you guys will be the first to hear. The intent to participate will determine the Title III districts and consortiums for the upcoming school year. And again, when we hear that information, we will pass it forward to you. Allocations. Funding is based on the population of English learners in schools served by the eligible entity during the previous school year. Awards are determined using the state allocation and the population of all ELs in Kentucky schools that are eligible entities. SEEK adjustments is determined based on the percentage enrolled data in the EL extract. Okay, any questions? I've not been looking at the chat, but any questions for EL reporting? We're going to move to immigrant next.
Randy, there were 2 questions that I've been able to answer, but I will share them in case others on the call had the same question. So the first one was the expected exit date is 5 years from the identified date. Should that be the end year with a date of 6/30/20 or exactly 5 years from identified? My response was, it is recommended to enter the date as 6/30 of the 5th year. However, this date does not affect EL reporting, so there is not a KDE requirement of which to use. The second question, okay. If a student has exited and are in monitoring, then do they not need anything listed as active because they have exited, correct? We have not had this come up multiple times. They do not need to be included in the extract, right? Sorry, I just turned my camera on, Ryan. My answer to that was, that is correct. The student will be considered EL monitored, so they will not be included in your EL data or reporting. The program status will be updated to exited EL with the program exit date of 6/30 for the year they reached attainment, and EL services and accommodations should be ended with the same date. And I also added that the monitoring years will auto-populate from the exit date. Don't know if you had anything to add to those, but those were the 2 questions.
That's perfect. Thank you, Wendy.
Okie doke.
Okay,
we had one more question just come in. When enrolling a new student and importing student records, we typically import the right column data import. Are those additional EL documents under transfer docs something the EL team would import?
So I think I can handle that one. So there are, and I think in the screenshot that was in Brandy's presentation and is also on page 15 of the English Learner Data Standards, there are data imports that must be imported, but yes, there are also transfer documents that need to be imported so that you are ensuring to get the student's entire English learner record. So for transfer documents, the name of those is English Learners, EL services, and EL accommodation. So it's very important to import those. They'll come in as PDF transfer documents, but that'll give you the information as to what types of service and accommodations the students has been previously receiving. And then for your data imports, you have to import the extended census import wizard. That brings in that student's home primary language. The assessment import wizard, so that you can ensure to get all EL screeners and previous access scores. And then the English learners import wizard. So that brings in those dates and everything that's on that EL tab. So if you can reference, like I said, on page 15 of the data standards, those things that need to be transferred or imported are highlighted. Great question.
Thank you.
Okay, there's one more question that just came in. If the home language is not listed and we choose other, is there a way to add languages to the list? So Martha, that's a really good question. We are required to report the language federally each year. So if there is a language that has started to become popular in your district, with your transient students, you can email me or Brandy and we can work to get that added to Infinite Campus, but we do have to check to make sure that the language is one that we can report before it's added. So you will need to send that language or request to add a language to us at KDE to facilitate the process. I think that's it, Brandy. Turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And remember that the EL data standards are linked at the end of this presentation, and they're also on our website. Okay, we're going to switch to immigrant data standards. The bulleted items are sections A, B, and C for the immigrant data standards. Section A is identifying an immigrant student, the date entered the U.S. school. To be considered an immigrant, the student has not been attending one or more schools more than 3 full academic years. The home primary language is required for federal reporting for immigrant students. Identifying an immigrant student, section B, the immigrant indicator must be selected in the academic year to be considered for immigrant reporting. And we do use that for the immigrant subgrant. Immigrant considerations, when a student has been enrolled in the U.S. school for 3 years, they are no longer considered an immigrant. If the student left the U.S., later returned, and has not been in the U.S. for 3 years, documentation must be kept in the student record for verification and upon the date entered the U.S. school to reflect the return date. The immigrant indicator must be deselected on the student's current enrollment if the date entered the U.S. school is greater than 3 years as of October 1st of the reporting year. The immigrant report access must be granted by KSIS district administrator. Provide list of students identified as immigrants and highlights data quality issues. The date entered the school greater than 3 years and the date entered U.S. school missing. Reporting requirements. The Title III immigrant report should be generated on a regular basis. And again, it's a good idea to have a policy on generating it on a regular basis to ensure that you don't have errors. KDE will extract immigrant data from IC on the second Tuesday in October to determine the recipients of the Title III immigrant subgrant. And in order, you do not have to receive Title III funding to receive the Title III immigrant subgrant. Title III requires states to reserve funds for subgrants to districts that have experienced a significant increase in the percentage or number of immigrant students and youth who have enrolled in schools in the district in the current fiscal year compared to the average of the last 2 fiscal years. And again, you can receive the immigrant subgrant based on those numbers and you don't have to receive, you could still be eligible even if you don't receive Title III funding. Reporting timeline. The second Tuesday of October, the immigrant count extracted to determine the allocations, and it's important that you check those days because once that second Tuesday rolls around, the number that you have inputted is the number that we take for that immigrant subgrant. May 1st, the district immigrant data verification window opens. June 30th, it closes. July 1st, KDE extracts immigrant data to be used for state and federal reporting purposes. Okay, any questions on immigrant reporting? I don't see any.
Yep, I don't see any either. Crystal, do you?
No, I do not see any at all.
Okay, I'm going to keep trucking then. Contact information. I'm Brandy Neal again. I'm a program consultant for Title III, and I could be your Title I consultant too. Cayman Triplett is a Title III program consultant. Wendy Spalding is our data guru, and Marjorie Conley is our systems consultant IT. If you have any questions or need any help, not only on EL or data standards, reach out to Cayman or I for your Title III questions. I have linked some great resources at the back of this presentation. The data standards are linked. If you are new or this is updated annually, or if any kind of laws or regulations change. So if you have not looked at and read through the District Guide for English Learner Program, it pretty much walks you through all of the regulations and requirements for your Title III program. I have linked the home language survey template. Remember that you have to use KDE's HLS. And then the WIDA Screener Interpretive Guide for Scored Reports is also linked. So if you have any questions, you can reach out and let us know. Other than that,
we had one more question that just popped up, Brandy, and I answered in the chat, but I'll say it for the group since we have a couple minutes left. Are foreign exchange students considered immigrants? Yes, if a foreign exchange student meets the definition of immigrant, they can be selected to be included in that student group. They most likely may not, based on the definition. We have this come up a lot with English learner. Are foreign exchange students considered English learner? And yes, a student for foreign exchange should be given an HLS on their initial enrollment into a Kentucky public school. If the language is something other than English, then they do go through that screener process and can receive English learner services if qualified. And that was actually added to the data standards this year that were just updated for 25-26. That has not went out to districts yet or to our Title III coordinators, but we plan to get that out hopefully today or tomorrow. But that instruction was added, like I said, for the 25-26 school year in the data standards. I don't see any other questions, and it looks like we're right at our time. So you did great, Brandy.
Maybe perfect. I mean, who knew? All right. If you have any questions, reach out to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy.